Dharma, the incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with, even in hundreds of thousands of millions of countless. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is the 6th day of this January 2020 session at Hidden Valley Zen Center in Southern California, and the weather is warming up, which is rather nice. Right now it's a perfect temperature. Not too hot, not too cold. In the mornings it's chilly, which is excellent for diving into our practice. In the Tibetan system, starting in the high mountains of the Himalayas, where it's intensely cold much of the year, quite high altitude, and the monks have developed something called tumo, which is they're able to generate such heat in their hara that they actually have contests who can dry out the number of wet sheets as they're sitting in the snow. And I think the record is something like 9 different sheets dried out, just simply from the heat of their body, generated by the focus and the determination and the commitment and the losing themselves in their practice. It's something that we learned how to do at Sogenji, actually, in the wintertime. It was the only way to keep warm, really, since there was no heat to speak of. I mean, the Roshi had a stove, quote unquote, a little kerosene heater brought into the Zendo proper in January to bring the temperature up to freezing for the benefit of the foreigners. It was very kind of him to do that. It would have been pretty dreadful otherwise. It was cold enough as it was, however. So you had to give yourself to your practice. And that was quite wonderful, because when we do give ourselves to our practice, to that degree, all kinds of amazing things can happen. And today I'd like to continue sharing Torei Enji's words from his discourse on the inexhaustible lamp, this version being the one translated by Myokyo Ni and available through the Zen Center London. And first I'd like to share what the 3 realms is all about. And let's read from here about that. The 3 realms are the realm of form, the formless realm, and the realm of desire. And let's see where it was that we had that information. Well, they're the realms of existence, and the one is the realm of greed and lust, and that is the lowest realm. Then comes I think it's the formless realm after that, and then the realm of desire, or maybe it's the 2 are reversed. At any rate, they just express how it can be for different people at different times. Sometimes we're really caught in greed, and that can be jealousy, it can be anger, it can be, because anger is based in greed, it can be desire for things, greed for possessions, and lust can be lusting after anything. It doesn't have to be physical or sexual. And these are places in our minds where it's guaranteed suffering. And through our Zen practice, we work to let go clinging to those mind states This is also part of the long maturation, the advanced practice as well. And it doesn't matter, there's no need to analyze what realm you think you're in. That's just a way of analyzing things for the benefit of people who like analysis. And now I'd like to share more about faith, because faith is one of the essential aspects of Zen practice. And in fact, we wouldn't be sitting here on day 6 of a sesshin if we didn't have faith. And here, Satori is saying, the great sutra, the Kegon Sutra, is said to enumerate everything in the great Chilichasm, which includes all kinds of things like this mythical kingdom where Mount Sumeru is in the middle of this great vast ocean, and there are worlds, 4 worlds around it, and within those worlds are inhabitants, and also this whole hierarchy of the different realms of greed, anger, and delusion as part of one of them, the form realm, the formless realm, and so on. It's part of the great Chilichasm. It's a kind of a mythical way of explaining existence. Yet verily, it exists also in one mote of dust. And what applies to one mote of dust applies to all dust particles. We are so connected. There are no barriers between us, really, except in illusion. And Daibi comments, so though this great Kegon Sutra is said to enumerate everything in a great Chilichasm, it is also said to be contained in a mote of dust, or in a strand of hair. One particle of dust means one instant of thought in the human mind. One instant of thought in the human mind. And in the sutra it talks about this particle of dust having to be cracked open. In other words, part of our practice is thoughts come up and we take a look. And we see if they are really true, and if the thinking mind is accurate. Because we are so prone to delusion based on our investment in a self-image. And the self-image comes through our experiences in life. We have experiences, we draw conclusions about ourselves as a result of that. And it brings about pain and suffering. And then hopefully we are attracted to Zen practice and we have a way out of that pain and suffering. And the 4 noble truths that the Buddha realized during his meditations. The first noble truth is the reality of suffering in the human mind. And the reality of the causes of suffering is the second noble truth. That it comes from clinging, from attachment. We are attached in particular to this idea of who we are. And that idea of who we are is so strong that people even kill for it. All for an illusion. Because this self-image is an illusion. Yet, it feels real. It feels like it's us. And we act accordingly and create suffering for ourselves and for others. One particle of dust means one instant of thought in the human mind. This is the essence of the Kegon teaching. But while indulging in judgments of large and small, of wide and narrow, you cannot have faith in it. Once you have faith in it, it is easy to understand what Master Hakuin means by taking out Mount Fuji from a pillbox or walking inside a teacup. Or another koan is the East Mountain walks on the water. And another one is when the stomachs of the cattle outside Denver are filled with grain, the stomachs of the horses in Southern California are nourished. As to what applies to one particle of dust applies to all particles, so likewise is one instant of thought of one sentient being contains the whole of the Kegon Sutra, and the same applies to each instant of thought of all sentient beings. It is like the complexity and interpenetration of the reflections from Indra's net. And Indra's net is a metaphor, another metaphor for reality. In a room in Indra's palace hangs a net, and in the center of each connection on the net is a jewel, and each jewel reflects all the other jewels, and their reflections reflect all the other reflections of the other jewels' reflections, and so on and so forth, infinitely. Satori again says, once there was a man who had a clear wisdom and its unobstructed function, the heavenly eye. He saw that this sutra, the Kegon Sutra, was contained in a speck of dust, but thus contained was of little use to sentient beings. Pondering this, he decided, and this is kind of important, with the strength of my devotion, I will crack open this particle of dust and extract the sutra so that it may benefit all sentient beings. Devising skillful means to do so, he split the mote of dust, extracted the sutra, and made it available for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now, what applies to one particle of dust applies to all dust particles. Indeed, it applies to everything. Daibi comments, once there was a man means a person with true aspiration to follow the way. This doesn't necessarily refer to the time of the Buddha. Such a person may exist now too, right here in this Zendo. We may have 5 of these people right here in this Zendo. Right now. Everyone is from the beginning endowed with clear wisdom and with the purity of the heavenly eye. But whether this person opens their eye or not depends on the sincerity of their aspiration. And the sutra contained in a particle of dust, to find that out, one needs to undergo Sanzen study under a master. So seeing that even this great sutra was of no use to anybody while hidden within a mote of dust, his very heart, with his very heart, this man gave rise to the irreversible aspiration, quote, with the strength of my devotion derived from practice, I will crack open this speck of dust, which is also an instant of thought, so that this great sutra may become known and benefit all sentient beings, close quote. And having this vowed, he devised skillful means, such as giving himself into the samadhi of Mu, or of the single hand, as if his very life depended upon it. And that is an example for all of us. When we give ourselves more than 100% to our practice, when we commit to losing ourselves in the extended out breath and the reaching for the answer, what is Mu? Who am I? That face before my parents were born. Let me see it now. Then, miracles happen. Opening can take place. We're cracking open that mote of dust and extracting that sutra personified in ourselves. Besides these, there are no other skillful means. Truly, in following the way, there's no bargaining. One just has to break one's bones and give oneself into the training as if one's life depended upon it. What applies to one speck of dust applies to all dust particles. Indeed, it applies to everything. This means that just like this person, so all sentient beings, if each for themselves cracks open a speck of dust and each for themselves gets to know this great sutra, then the benefit will be so tremendous that the true realm of the Buddha will be once again coming into being. By this analogy, Torei points at the essence of the Dharma. And he continues, Torei continues. Followers of the Buddha, the wisdom of the Tathagata is also like this. It is free, unhindered, and of benefit to all sentient beings. The more let go each one of us is, the more let go each one of us becomes, the more benefit extends to all life. That cannot be emphasized enough. We don't do this for ourselves. We do it for everything and everyone. All the more so because there's no separation between us and anything else. This is the way of the Mahayana, to come to awakening for the benefit of all beings. And they continue. Followers of the Buddha, the wisdom of the Tathagata is also like this. It is free, unhindered, and of benefit to all sentient beings. It is contained in their very bodies. But all, alas, since they foolishly indulge in vain fancies and clinging attachments, the most perverse attachment being that of being somebody, a victim, a king, a queen, somebody who is important, somebody who needs certain things in order to be happy. All of these are recipes for pain and suffering. And yet we don't realize that that's how we live. We assume that these things are accurate and true. At a certain psychological level, some of them are, not all of them. And there are ways to work those. And they don't depend on somebody else. There are things that we can work on within our own mind. And the practice is also about working within our own mind. But alas, since they foolishly indulge in vain fancies and clinging attachments, they're not aware of it and cannot realize it, and thus cannot reap the benefit of it. And Daivi comments, the wisdom of the Tathagata is also like this. As this great sutra is contained in a particle of dust, so all sentient beings are endowed with and contain this wisdom of the Tathagata. This is true, but because of foolishness, which is delusion, they indulge in vain fancies and sticky attachments, and so they are not aware of it. Thus they stray from the way and cannot reap the benefit of the wisdom of the Tathagata inherent in them. One of the vain attachments is to prestige, is to position, is to self-importance. And it's one of the stickiest, and it's one of the most important to let go of, because as long as we think we're so important, as long as we think we're somebody that needs recognition or certain things in order to be happy, we're caught. We are so caught in suffering. And it's only we ourselves that can free we ourselves from this suffering. Nobody can do it for us. When Ganto and Seppo, back in Tang Dynasty China, were traveling together, and Ganto had already had deep realization, and Seppo was struggling to come to awakening. He hadn't done it yet. And finally he begs Ganto to awaken him. And Ganto's response was, there are 4 things I cannot do for you. I can't pee for you or poop for you. I can't eat for you or sleep for you. And I cannot bring you to awakening. This is only something that you could do for yourself, and you have to do it for yourself. And you can do it for yourself. And everybody needs to understand that. While there's nothing outside us and nothing we lack, Nirvana is openly shown to our eyes, as Hakuin said. Still, we need to search for that opening and manifest it and make it live in our lives. And the practice is an immensely powerful tool with which to do this. If we apply ourselves as deeply as we can, it makes every difference in the world. Thus they stray from the way and cannot reap the benefit of the wisdom of the Tathagatas inherent in them. And that means we need to crack open that instant of thought to see the truth. And then Daibi quotes the 6th patriarch, which became the essence of the koan on the original face. When the 6th patriarch had just been named 6th patriarch, and he had left the 5th patriarch's temple with the robe and the bowl at the urging of the 5th patriarch, who felt that his life was in danger, and headed south back to where he had come from. He's hiking through the mountains, and as soon as the monks realized that the robe and the bowl were gone, they set out in hot pursuit, sure that this man had stolen them, and probably jealousy also was a motivating factor, and greed, because he wasn't even a monk. And in those days, monks were highly revered in China. They still are. In America, a monk is no different from a layperson, other than their karmic draw to a lifetime of practice. That's all. We're all human beings on level ground. All of us endowed with the true nature. At any rate, back to the 6th patriarch. He's hiking through the mountains, and this posse of monks is after him, and they're led by monk Myo, who was in before he became a monk, he was a general. So he was good at tracking. And he was the one that caught up with the 6th patriarch himself. And as the story goes, the 6th patriarch laid the robe on the bowl and the bowl on a stone, recognizing that he was about to be accosted, and hid. And when monk Myo saw the robe and the bowl on the stone, he went to grab them and couldn't. There was a psychological block. At some level, he knew that the 6th patriarch truly was the designated 6th patriarch from the 5th patriarch. And so he broke out into a sweat and called out, lay brother, I didn't come from the robe and the bowl, I came for the teaching. And so then Huineng stepped out from behind where he was hiding and said, let's do Zazen first, and then I'll teach you. And so they sat Zazen. It doesn't say for how long, but at a certain point, after they've been sitting for a while, Huineng said to monk Myo, when you were following me, thinking of neither good nor evil, where then was your original face? In other words, monk Myo was so focused on tracking Huineng that there was nothing else in his mind other than the presence of trying to discern where Huineng had gone. And that is the mindset we have to reach in order to recognize that original face. We have to let go everything. And that goes not just for the koan of the original face, it goes for the koan mu, it goes for who am I, it goes for the sound of one hand, and it goes for subsequent koans as well. We cannot think our way to an answer. If we think our way to an answer, it's not the true answer. To continue, Torei says, with his wisdom eye of unobstructed purity, the Tathagata saw all sentient beings in all the Dharma realms and exclaimed, how wondrous, how wondrous! All sentient beings are inherently endowed with the wisdom and virtue of the Tathagata. Yet, due to foolishness, they go astray, do neither know nor see. I truly shall teach the great way, and so forever deliver them from vain fancies and sticky attachments. And as the wisdom is in their own bodies, I shall cause them to see that the vast wisdom of the Tathagata is not different from Buddha. Buddha meaning awakened. And then they get into the importance of faith in all this endeavor. Because if we don't have faith that there is something we can realize and that we're capable of realizing it, even though countless times in our practice we may fall into the delusion of not being capable, still, keep putting one foot in front of the other, doing this practice, it will unfold and eventually it will uncover the truth. Faith is the first requirement, and with it, vows are taken. Faith is the life spring of all religions, not of Buddhism alone. In the teachings of religion, the first outright demand is to have faith in God or faith in Buddha. But if demanded thus categorically, people get bewildered and fail to understand. Perhaps they have never bothered about religion, never seen or known God or Buddha, and so wonder what they're meant to have faith in and in what way. As to that, the Pure Land School and Christianity have seeming advantage because their object of faith is clear. But our Zen school has no such object of faith. We don't believe in Buddha. We don't put Shakyamuni up on an altar. I mean, there's a figure up here of that is known as a Buddha figure up here, but that's to impress us with a recognition that we too are Buddha. There's no God sitting up here that we bow down to. When we do a prostration before the altar or a prostration before after the chanting or at other times in the Zendo, we are prostrating. We are recognizing the deep, profound perfection of each one of us. When we do it up at the altar, we're recognizing we are expressing gratitude for the teaching. When we do prostrations coming into Sanzen, we are expressing gratitude for what the room's potential holds, which is the teaching. We are not doing it to the teacher. And that's really important to recognize. We're doing it for the potential that we can realize in that room, because the potential is a bit greater in the sense that we've got a catalyst in the room in the form of the teacher. As to that, the Pure Land School and Christianity have a seeming advantage because their object of faith is clear. But our Zen school has no such object of faith. So when teaching faith in the heart, or faith in the mind, because the character for that is translated as heart here also can be translated as mind, the Chinese character, and demanding that when training, we must indeed have the great root of faith. We need to make quite clear what faith is. Thus our gratitude goes to Master Satori for the following detailed exposition on faith. Faith is like a compass in a foggy sea, the magnetic needle that points the direction. Master Tori's heart was brimful of it, and he's talking from his heart, so we must listen with our heart. And Tori says, the Sutra of Complete Enlightenment states, virtuous ones, all sentient beings testify full enlightenment. One finds a teacher, and depending on the affinity links with that Dharma teaching, one trains and learns at the same time in the sudden or gradual way, thus entering the path of correct training for the Tathagata's full enlightenment, whether the root be small or great, all will reap the Buddha fruit. And Tori comments, the complete title of this part of the sutra collection is Dai Hoto Engaku Ryogi Kyo, translated as Great Universal Complete Enlightenment Sutra of the Developed Mahayana. These sutras are classified as of 7 types, and so on and so forth. In this sutra, Shakyamuni says, virtuous ones, all sentient beings testify full enlightenment. All sentient beings dwell within 10 realms. These range from the miserable realms below to the Buddha realm above. Hells, hungry ghosts, animals fighting demons, human beings, heavenly beings, Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Buddhas. A Buddha too is a sentient being. And Shakyamuni, who became Buddha, was a sentient being. If the trainee can find their way of correct training for the Tathagata's peerless enlightenment and enter it, they are fortunate indeed. Of course, the way that Shakyamuni himself walked is the right way and is also the most conducive. On entering it, it is essential to postpone scholarly and intellectual study and first of all gain insight into one's own heart ground or mind ground. And this ties in with the previous teishos about the differentiation between the roles of the left brain and the right brain, left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. The left hemisphere being the seat of thought, of language, of understanding patterns, of creating stories. The right brain being the seat of an expanded awareness of oneness, the seat of compassion, the seat of joy. Yet in our culture, we are taught that the way to live is to depend on essentially the left brain, to depend on thought, analysis, which is a left brain ability, and to think our way through life. Unfortunately, that's only half of the picture. We're lopsided. And when Jill Bolte Taylor had her stroke of insight, as she called it, her left brain was taken offline, and she experienced profoundly the workings of her right brain and found it an amazing, wonderful experience. We need to have an integrated brain, one where the benefits of the gifts of the left brain can be used when necessary, and yet where the benefits of the broader, more global picture of reality that exists from the right brain can also be used. And neither one necessarily takes precedence over the other, but thought, speech, stories are tools and not reality. And unfortunately, this self-image comes as a result of thought and speech. It's a left brain thing. Yet we can see through that story. And when we see through that story, we are free of the pernicious control of it. Of course, then we need also, as you've heard so many times, We need to work on the long maturation, the advanced practice, to let go of the habit patterns that have been lodged in place, established and lodged in place since the very beginning. So to have faith in the practice, to work with a genuine teacher, and to give yourselves fully. When they talk about breaking bones, it's not necessarily literal, but the metaphor is to go beyond, to give yourself 100%, 500%, 1,000% to this search for the truth, for who you really are, and for the further practice of, once you have had a level of realization, to continue to deepen and have further insights, further awakenings, and to see more clearly, deeper, and have increasing liberty from your habit patterns, to let them go, to behave in more and more enlightened ways. It doesn't matter what our teacher might say about what level of awakening we may have had. It's irrelevant, because it's only a drop in the bucket. There is so much farther to go, so much more to open to, so much more to let go. And it's vital in the surface of relieving suffering to continue endlessly, never ceasing until everything has been let go of, till all beings have been liberated. This is our vow. At some level we understand this, but it's not always to put it into action. We get discouraged, we get frustrated, we get disenchanted. We feel like, oh, well, I'm home free. We can have false assumptions of awakening. This is why it's so important to work with a teacher who has had a level of awakening that has been verified by their teacher, has gone through the advanced practice, and is honestly and dedicatedly working on themselves to continue their practice and never staying stuck. Always willing to look at what is unfolding in their life and see where maybe, just maybe, they might be caught in something still. This is vital. We have a responsibility to lessen suffering in the world to the degree we can. And the more we lessen it in our own environment, the more that becomes possible for all beings. To give yourself so completely to your practice that nothing stands in the way of increasing depth, awareness, clarity, let-go-ness, is a gift to humanity, a gift to all life. The most important gift we can give. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.